Have you ever forgotten the name of someone dear to you? Not just for a moment, but truly forgotten it. You stand there, facing them, smiling, recognizing their eyes, and inside, only emptiness. A cold wave rises within. Is it really starting already? Then, as if someone turned off the light in the room. You walk into the kitchen but can't remember why. You look at the keys on the table and can't recall, were you just looking for them or have you already lost them? It's not just awkwardness, it's fear. The fear that day by day a piece of you is vanishing, that you're alive yet slowly erasing like a photograph left out in the sun. And at some point, a realization dawns on you. If you don't stop it now, tomorrow might be too late. But one day, in a moment of similar despair, one man achieved the impossible. His name was Alexander Mikulin, an academic, an engineer, an inventor. At the age of 50, doctors had written him off. Too weak a heart, a failing mind, aging, but at 90, he was still designing aircraft engines, learning new languages and reciting poems from memory. He didn't take pills, he didn't visit expensive doctors. His methods were so simple that they were hard to believe, yet it was these very methods that brought clarity back to his mind. And today, you will learn how just 2 movements a day can make your brain sharp once more. How, like in your youth, you will discover a drink that brings back memories, and one strange ritual that helped people recall details they'd forgotten for decades. All of this in a proven method by a Soviet genius, a method that can activate your brain 1,000%. But first, the movement that seems foolish, and for that very reason, saves your memory. Picture yourself barefoot, slowly rising up on your toes, pausing for half a second, as if frozen, and then dropping sharply onto your heels. Your heels strike the floor, not hard, but noticeably, and you rise again. 30 seconds. Just 30 seconds a day. That's all. Mikulin called this the gravitational impact. He said that at that moment, the blood stagnating in your legs shoots up through the vessels like a spring river and reaches the most important organ, the brain. Because with age, blood grows lazy. It moves slowly, like thick syrup, especially if you sit for long periods. And we sit almost all day, at the desk, in transit, on the couch. The brain suffocates. Not in a figurative sense, literally. It doesn't get enough oxygen. The story of Evelyn from New York. She was 77. More and more, she'd forget why she'd entered a room. She'd search for her keys for hours. And then somewhere, she heard about this exercise. At first, she laughed, but she tried it. 2 weeks later, she was telling her own story. She suddenly remembered where the old family photo albums were. Albums she hadn't been able to find for 3 months. No miracle, just blood finally reaching where it was needed. If you're still with us and you feel this hits close to home, write the word blood in the comments. It helps us understand that you're listening. And if these words resonate, subscribe and support our channel. Your response is our strength to keep sharing knowledge that could change someone's life. But there's one condition. You must do it every day, not every other day, not just when you feel like it, every day like brushing your teeth, because each skipped day is like turning off one little lantern in your memory. At first, it's unnoticeable, and then one day, you're standing in darkness, not knowing how you got there. But even that isn't enough, because you can get the blood moving and still not let it pass through. Why? Because most people have a real blockage in their necks. And that's what we'll talk about next. Have you noticed how, after long hours at the computer or hunched over your phone, your head feels heavy, as if your thoughts drift through a fog? We're used to blaming it on fatigue, but Mikulin called it something else. Silent suffocation of the brain. When you slouch, especially as you get older, the vessels in your neck become compressed, like a hose that's been stepped on. The blood still flows, but barely. The brain doesn't get enough nourishment, enough oxygen. It can't think clearly, can't remember, can't recover. And the solution Mikulin proposed was brilliantly simple. No pills, no massages, just 2 minutes of stretching a day. If you have a pull-up bar, simply hang from it. No effort, no pull-ups, just hang, like a rag doll. If you don't have a bar, stretch your arms upward, as if reaching for a jar on the highest shelf. This straightens the spine, frees the vessels, and lets the blood flow again. Henry, a retired architect from Virginia, tried this at 82. 3 weeks later, he suddenly began to remember complex calculations he hadn't been able to reconstruct for the past 10 years. His daughter said, "Dad seems to have shed 15 years. He was speaking clearly again, even joking, like he used to. But the most frightening thing is that we don't even notice how we're killing our own memory every day. We spend hours hunched over screens, we shrink in on ourselves, we freeze, and then we're surprised that we forget the simplest things, the neighbor's name, the grandchild's birthday, the phone password. And yet, there is a way to bring clarity back, a way that smells of herbs, honey, and freshness, a way you can drink if you're ready to hear an old village wisdom and have a little patience. Imagine a quiet morning. You open the window, and the cool, fresh scent drifts in. On the kitchen table lies a celery root. You chop it finely, as if releasing the juice inside, and pour warm, not hot, water over it. Then you add 2 spoonfuls of honey, not that sticky store-bought syrup, but real honey, golden, like frozen sunlight. Let it steep, an hour, maybe 2. It becomes a drink that Mikulin called the elixir of clarity. Its taste is unexpectedly subtle, honeyed softness layered over the earthy aroma, and with each sip, it's as if a light bulb flickers on in your mind. At first you don't notice it, but then, suddenly, the name of an old school friend you hadn't been able to recall for 15 years resurfaces, or you remember clearly where you left your glasses. Martha from Florida. She was 83 when she began drinking this infusion every morning. One day, over tea, she said to her daughter, "You know what my 3rd grade teacher's name was? Mrs. Wilson." Her daughter nearly cried because her mother hadn't been able to remember that name for almost half a century. But it's not magic. The effect comes slowly, like a warm sunrise. Honey protects the brain from inflammation and decay, and celery rebuilds the connections between neurons, brick by brick. There's just one crucial point: consistency. Because if you're doing everything right but skipping days, the brain begins to grow lazy again. And laziness, that's the start of the end. Yet even the purest infusion and the straightest posture won't work if you miss one vital thing, what Mikulin called the fuel for the brain. And it has nothing to do with food. It has to do with what you feed your mind every day. Mikulin once said that the brain doesn't age, it simply falls asleep if it's not engaged. And he was right. Imagine your neurons as a crew of workers. If you don't give them tasks, they start lazing around, then they wander off, and eventually they dismantle the very bridges they once built. That's why even the most beneficial drink and the straightest posture won't help if the brain isn't alive, if it isn't learning, if it isn't amazed. Mikulin once observed an elderly math teacher. At 85, he could instantly solve the most complex equations in his head. Not because he had a photographic memory, but because every evening he did one simple exercise. He recited 5 new things he had learned that day. It could be a new fact, a word, or even a joke. The important thing was that it was new. 79-year-old Nina from Voronezh went even further. She began keeping a discovery journal, writing down 3 new facts every single day. After 6 months, she didn't just remember all her relatives' birthdays, she suddenly started speaking Polish again, a language she had learned in her youth and was sure she had completely forgotten. If you've read this far and feel inspired, write the word memory in the comments. It will help others know they're not alone. Support our channel with a subscription if you believe that regaining clarity is possible at any age. Your participation gives meaning to every word we share here. Try it right now. What new thing have you learned today? If you can't remember a single one, that's a worrying sign. Your brain has already begun to doze off, but there's a way to wake it up. Read signs backward. Write with your non-dominant hand. Count the steps in your building in English. Make your brain squirm with the effort. Let it resist, let it complain, but let it live. Because memory, it isn't a warehouse of facts, it's a river. And if you don't let it flow, it will stagnate. And all of this is important, but the most important part isn't even the facts themselves, it's why you're doing it. And that's what we'll talk about in the final, most crucial fragment. Here's the essence. Everything we've talked about isn't just a list of exercises or helpful tips. It's a system, like a well-oiled engine, where every gear turns the next. The gravitational impact drives the blood. The straight spine opens the path. Celery with honey feeds the brain. And 5 new facts a day force your neurons to wake up. But it only works when everything is together, when it becomes part of your life, not just a temporary experiment. Michelin once said, "The brain isn't a gym, it's a garden. You can't just water it once a month. It needs daily care." And at 80, he bought himself a telescope. Not because he wanted to train his memory, but because one night, looking up at the sky, he realized he no longer recognized the constellations. He simply wanted to remember. So he began to study the stars. 6 months later, he could name every nebula. Not because he was forcing his memory to work, but because he became fascinated. That's the real secret. Don't force your brain. Ignite it. Find something that makes it want to work again. It could be a hobby, a game, a new piece of knowledge, a new goal, even a simple habit of rising on your toes, if you know why you're doing it, can change everything. So ask yourself honestly, do you truly want to feel clarity in your mind again? Or are you just reading this out of curiosity? Because if you're ready, then go find your own telescope. That one thing that will make your brain want to live again. If you care about yourself or your loved ones, support our channel, Mindful Discovery. Subscribe and write 1 in the comments if this material has been helpful to you. And if not, write 0. That will help us make our content more precise and useful for you. Your support gives us the strength to keep sharing these insights, and if you have something to say, please write it. Your stories are precious, your thoughts matter. We read every word, and it's because of you that this warm and understanding space is born here. See you in the next video. Stay with us.